And then we have Pixelriffs, who founded a city in the desert, and then after he killed the dragon, or was responsible for the killing of the dragon, he got exiled from his own kingdom, went back to the town that he was originally found in. They turned him away, and then he found an old shrine that turned totems of undying into thunderstorms. But he was still so mortal that he ended up just kind of like fading away into the sands of the desert.
What?
So you don't know Pixelriff lore.
What?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I know a lot of Minecraft lore. I know I've spent so much time doing research on these different things. I surprisingly have not watched everything out there. What?
What part would you like me to expand upon? Sing to me, Cleo, muse of history, of the empires that spread across millennia, of the wanderers who became leaders, and the blood that seeped into their lands to grow and grow again. Tell of the humans and the fae, of the gods and those who forgot, of the sleeping giants and the dimensions filled with lore. Tell of the proud mountain heights and the humble homes of those who survived. Welcome to FanDive. My name is Chaos.
I'm Andy. Mike didn't pick me up for a second, but hi, I'm Andy!
And today we are talking about Empires SMP and the differences between the lore told in Season 1 and the lore told in Season 2. I say lore, mostly the vibes, but the lore of like how they tell the story.
Yeah, of course it's going to have at least some lore, because it is a lore series. They're always playing characters when they're on Empires. It's lore.
It's lore. But lore in the sense of the backstory of the world, I feel like is especially relevant in Season 2 because it's so focused on reflecting on the past and bringing stuff forward into the future. Now, when I originally put forward the fact that we were talking about this on our Tumblr website, my friend Fuzz went, "You found my hyperfixation. I'm going to send you 20 million questions for your Q&A." And I went, we're probably just going to tie that into the conversation.
Today is just Q&A for you specifically, Fuzz.
Secret, unheard third guest star, Fuzz Studios, who you should totally go follow on Twitch. Should we start off with Season 1, just talking about how it was a lot of, like, proper empires being built up in Season 1. They said this was Empires SMP. Everyone here is having courts and kingdoms and palaces. And it was intense to the point where some groups who were technically originally separate empires ended up somehow forming into one empire. We'll cover that in a second, but like, it feels so much more like this is a political fantasy that is told through Minecraft roleplay.
It was really interesting to me because I watched mostly Scott and Shovel for that season. And so I got to learn about, like, the exports and the difference between each different person. Like, they're all building their own kingdom, their own city, their own empire. But the difference between each person of the characters they play, it was a lot of fun. Just exports. Exports was weird to me. And they clearly set it up behind the scenes. However, they had the specific things that they dealt with and traded with other kingdoms for alliances and stuff like that.
Yeah, they set the exports up behind the scenes, but I think that was really more into like, how does this server economy want to work? Because a lot of servers have started defaulting to the Hermitcraft way of things, where a person sets up a shop, someone comes and buys it with diamonds. However, that doesn't need to be the default. And I think Empires did a really interesting thing where it's like, if we are doing something themed around kingdoms, what should our kingdom specialize in? Where the ones living in the snow are going to care about keeping warm, so they're going to export a ton of wool. Don't pay me with diamonds, pay me with resources.
Exactly.
It also removes the need to go mining a lot in later games, which is something that drags down bigger, long-running servers that have a diamond economy. And it's like, if you are focusing on a lore-based server, yeah, you wouldn't want to spend 3 hours on a mining trip so you can go buy dye to change the color of your house.
And when you're a person who's constantly playing a character, you have to have an explanation for why you do the different things that you do. And sometimes it doesn't make sense for, and again, I watched those perspectives, for a mushroom gnome, I think they were gnomes, to just go into the mines for hours at a time and have copious amounts of diamonds. That doesn't make sense. That's with a dwarf. Did we have a dwarf?
We did not, but honestly, I think that's better for it because dwarven lore has a lot of controversy behind it. But we had gnomes, and we can work with that. And the gnomes were from a different dimension, were technically fae, but we also had fae. But yeah, it's complicated, but it somehow all works into this weird economy that makes sense.
I personally enjoy those small things a lot. The stories that they lead and having trades and resources be a lore thing as well. It's not just, hey, can I have this? It's, hey, can I have your hand in marriage? So that I can have wool whenever I want?
Yeah, it also really helps. Like, why are you allies with this person? It's because you use their resource a lot. It makes sense, and it creates a bigger lore, as in the history and the backstory of the world. And then we start adding in the stories that we're actively telling with the ocean goddess and Eeyore and Exor, or whatever their names are. Like, that comes after we deal with the politics, which makes the world feel more alive. And that's what really set Season 1 apart from Season 2, I think.
They had some custom stuff in Season 1, obviously. Zornoth alone, clearly they have custom stuff. But in Season 2, they had more people, I guess, is how I would phrase it. There was things that felt like the city was more alive rather than a moment frozen in time to look at this kingdom.
Empire Season 1 felt like almost a top-down look at a city. Like, you were playing a city builder game, and, like, logically, you know there's people around, but in Joel's case, it's him with a bunch of heads. And, like, sure, are those statues of him, or are those clones of him, or does he make all the people wear his skull like he did when he was the emperor of everything? Or could it just be like, yeah, he needs a group of people to live in his city, versus in Season 2, when Lizzie literally made a small town filled with animals walking around, because that was her people.
That was exactly what I was thinking about. It's Lizzie's town.
Lizzie's town felt so alive in such a personal sense, while in Season 1 it felt so alive in a magical lore history of the world sense. And those are two separate things, but they function so beautifully in the way that they were done.
She is a Disney princess in Season 1, and nobody convinced me otherwise. Scott was also a Disney princess, but that's a whole other thing. Lizzie was like watching a movie.
I mean, Lizzie literally had a musical number. Like, of course she's the Disney princess.
Watching her was like watching a movie of the lone girl becoming the queen that she knows she's destined to be, but turns out there's fate and magic gonna make it difficult, and, you know, a Disney story or a fairy tale.
Lizzie's story is so interesting because, you know, she started off as a human trying to build an empire where everyone said it was impossible, and then she did it, and then she found this weird orb that she decided to eat for some reason. What do you think it tasted like? Like seaweed? I feel like it tasted like seaweed. Maybe a blueberry.
No.
Like a blueberry flare.
You know that fish thing where people eat fish eggs?
Oh, ew, no, I hate the texture, I hate the texture, I hate the texture.
Okay, so I don't even have to finish my sentence, but...
But yeah, Lizzie ate that, and then for some reason became an axolotl, which, one, is not a fish, and two, does not live in the ocean. Hey. That is what is
destiny.
Whatever a salamander is, that's what an axolotl is, and they live in cenotes, which are like sinkholes that are flooded with waters, and they like super do not belong. It's destiny. Okay, but yeah, Lizzie was one of the first real instances that we got of the gods walking among humans. This is like the moment of like, yes, this is our emperor, the ocean goddess. And we saw that in Season 2 with Joel, but Joel specifically built himself above his citizens. He didn't so much walk among them as he did walk above them.
He made it fair. I am a god! Which is different than Lizzie just being like, what is it, 9 feet tall in Season 1?
You know, your queen is a 9 foot tall blue axolotl. Okay, is the bread gonna be made today?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it was. That is exactly what that was.
Versus Joel, where it's like, yeah, your emperor is the storm god. You better pray that he doesn't strike you down with lightning. Like, those are two very different vibes to bring to a season.
Still build an empire.
Still build an empire. And then we have Jimmy,
Love
which
Joel's
Jimmy
take on war.
was not originally Lizzie's sibling, until people went, oh, the swamp empire is right next to the ocean empire, and they get along really well. And at one point, like, there was a joke of like, yeah, Jimmy came out of a broken egg, and then they tied that into lore later.
Okay. I don't remember it I do not remember being there. Remember it being talked about before it was put into one of the poem destiny prophecy thingies. Prophecy, that's the word I'm looking for. However, I do distinctly remember there was 2 eggs. One was pristine, and the other was a little bit weird. That's not how it was phrased, but the other was slightly deformed.
I just remember it's like Jimmy saying, did you just call me a broken egg? And like Lizzie responding, I think you came out of a broken egg. Like, to me, that is like the origin of like, we're calling the siblings in lore right now, which Jimmy came out of a broken egg. But that was originally not set up. But to Jimmy in the Swamp Empire, he killed a cod and then started wearing its head, and then there's this implied council in his empire, and this is another thing to bring up, is the councils in Empire Season 1, and the council said you're not fit to wear this and take the head away from him. And then like at the end of the series he walks away dramatically saying I can be my own person, only for the camera to pan saying the council left a note with the cod saying you are now worthy, but Jimmy had left and decided to become his own person and not the codfather. But like, that's a whole, I mean, that is a whole tangent on itself. Like, but we kind of see that reflected in Season 2, but not so much the councils being the one to make the decision.
I don't remember any of this.
Oh, okay. So I am leading the charge on this episode, if you guys don't know. But to me, Jimmy's story felt so much like, yes, we have that whole plot point of him versus the Salmons versus Whip's count.
I know that much.
We know that much. That's a very important part to the overarching lore as a whole. But his individual story is so much about learning to be his own person, even when he's being pranked and having his cod head taken away from him and like having his title stripped from him. At the end of it all, he decides to be his own person, separate from Lizzie, separate from the codfather, and he walks away from it.
Actually, that's actually really cool.
It's really cool.
Know that.
Maybe we should go watch Jimmy Solidarity Gaming's Empire SMP Season 1.
No,
okay.
Season 1 is just the mushroom. It's
only there.
Just shrub. Just shrub. I love shrub.
But also Scott?
Okay, well, yes, I needed to watch Scott because I was so confused by Shovel getting into these scenarios with Scott. I would watch and I would go, I am so confused, and then binge all of another person's point of view to try and understand. So that was he wore the antlers, yeah?
Yes, Scott Season 1 wore the antlers. And what's funny is that the Zornoff lore that Shovel got involved in, that started off as a prank. But originally it was Scott having, again, an empire filled with courts and noblemen, and it felt this very top-down political fantasy. Until one day he found this cave full of corruption and these weird vine thingies that had a book that told the history of his land. And this is where we get a lot of heavy lore regarding the backstory of the world, which is something that, again, Season 2, we'll talk about more in a moment, but Season 2 felt very, we're living in the moment, while Season 1 was like, let us establish the background. And so it's like, it tells of the stories of these gods who had to seal away corruption, and most of the gods fell asleep, and then these 2 brothers that were remaining who were gods, and then one started being really angry at the other, and they started fighting, and then they chose human champions.
God, right? Scott was also a god at the end, right?
So,
like, by the end.
Scott, from my interpretation, he was, I don't want to say the reincarnation, because that's something very specific, but he was the champion, the chosen. He was the next one. It's like this god was once this one thing and is now Scott.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Sure, yeah. But then that gets confusing because Zornoff, I don't think originally was meant to be like, yeah, and these 2 brothers were born and it was Scott and Zornoff. I think Zornoff was someone else, but then when Scott realized he was meant to be this god's champion or reincarnation of this god, or however that lore worked, I'm gonna be real, it's been a hot minute since I've checked up on this lore, he realized that made him and Zoronoff siblings. And then at the end of the season, when Scott had to sacrifice himself to stop Zoronoff after he escaped again, they were taken to another dimension, which we'll cover in a second, where he and Zoronoff actually got to live as siblings.
Yeah, and he wasn't all corrupted and stuff.
Yeah, it took away the god being corrupted.
There's such interesting god lore, I'll be honest. Just the powers that take place in this universe. Because it is one universe between season 1 and season 2. It's canonically the same world, like very, very far apart.
Yeah, they take place after 1,000-year gaps. Like after the Rapture, there's a minimum of 1,000 years. That's called the Dark Age. And then we start seeing the new empires pop up.
Yeah, and a number of them are, like, vaguely reminiscent of old ones, where, like, they're clearly the old thing, but they'll do, like, this is the old thing, look what I just found.
Look what I just found.
This other thing.
I feel like we should probably work through some more of season 1, but it's worth bringing up that in season 1, Joey Graceffa had an empire, which most people called the Lost Empire. It technically had a different name, but most people called it the Lost Empire. In there were humanized animals, or anamorphic. They were animals walking on 2 feet, walking and talking, and those were the citizens there. And at the end of season 1, the big rapture happened. Joey's forest burnt down. And then we get to season 2, and we start seeing Lizzie, who is a cat who's wearing a human mask. And it's never directly said by Lizzie, but Pix does talk about it after the server closed, where it's like, it was meant to be implied that Lizzie's character is a descendant from those who fled Joey's burning forest.
Yeah, exactly. Pix is a bit more direct about it in his lore of the concept of, hey, we're doing lore. Look, history.
Because his whole character was about unpacking that history. Everyone else was ready to sit and live in the world, while Pix was, let's understand this world. And, let's go back to talking about the gods. Like, Pearl was spending her life as a normal farmer, goddess, or whatever, and then she got so tied and connected to the land that when the Rapture happened, she died, and then became a goddess of another SMP that then connected back to season 2 by dropkicking Ollie's in there.
I want our own episode on specifically mythical sausages.
That's on the list, and we will unpack that. Yeah, there's so many.
Because Pearl is a god now. Why do they all ascend, or reincarnations, or whatever's up with Joel?
Yeah. Let's see. Well, you really like talking about Shovel, and Shovel does not play a god in season 1, but her role as a gnome also has her extremely connected to the land, to the point where she takes over the role of the wolf spirit and then meets with the mother wolf of the forest. And it's just so connected to, like, this is meant to be a non-human character. Like, not only is she a gnome, but she's also, like, a part of the world.
Yeah, because she was running away from the corruption. To escape and find a new home is basically what her origins were in season 1. And then she did not successfully escape the corruption.
She went to the Nether because that's where she believed that she was next to go, because that's where she was technically originally from.
Didn't she just use it to travel, I thought?
I'm not certain. Her finale makes me feel like the gnomes were originally from what then became the Nether, but it was something else before.
Oh, quite possibly. I don't think I ever interpreted it as that, but that actually makes sense.
That's my interpretation. That could very clearly change. But then we also have the Fae of the world, like House Blossom, Catherine Elizabeth. I always interpreted that as like a Fae spring court, but I saw other people saying, no, Catherine's just like a human with wings. I'm like, that's not quite how humans work, but okay.
Humans don't have wings, for the record. Humans, you should not have wings.
Elytra is slightly different, but like Catherine Elizabeth did specifically say those were hers.
That's a fairy. That's a fairy.
Yeah. And then we're like not technically a god, but we're very much bringing like this is almost like fairy tale logic that we're dealing with. Scott of the elves, Catherine of the Fae. Shub as the gnomes. Like, we're bringing in such fairy tale logic. Like, yeah, in season 2, we have a god, but not so much of it.
When you're telling a story, when you're telling a fairy tale specifically, when you're talking about there was this princess, there was this king that fell upon this and earned the sword of valor, or like stuff like that, is honestly what they were doing. With more political in it, but still like a child fairy tale version of politics. Season 2 is less of the more classic fairy tales, but it's still these stories.
It feels like a fantasy novel today would have. Talking about the politics of season 1, the one that we really see is Count Whip, which is not an emperor, is not a prince. He is the count of this very specific region, which studies like technology, and then later ends up being siblings with Gem, the wizard, the teacher of the Crystal Cliffs, which the Crystal Cliffs being a school isn't an empire, but the Gremlins being ruled over by a count also implies it's not an empire, which then, with them being siblings, imply that they're part of one big empire.
I did not think of it like that. I always thought of them as separate, but for siblings, so they're always visiting each other. I think it was the fact that a lot of the different kingdoms were trying to be leaders in different ways. They didn't all want to be a king or a queen. They wanted to be leaders in different ways and explore the different ways. So I just kind of accepted it and didn't think about it at all.
Yeah, again, we're tacking on, that's my explanation for this thing that happened in Minecraft lore that people were improvising. To me, this makes sense because, like, this is, again, as I said before, almost like a political fantasy. And then if we're looking at it in terms of politics, those two things would be connected. But if you're looking at it in terms of Minecraft lore, they're siblings and they rode away on a dragon together and we don't know if they're immortal or not.
You know, yeah, I don't know. They could be immortal, they could be mortal. They are just Minecraft characters that had a very fun story, to be honest. I quite enjoyed it.
There were so few proper human characters in season 1 compared to season 2. Like, we had Joel, who was so human he couldn't see Zoronoff, yet still somehow married a goddess. And then we had, like, Joey, who we already talked about, who led a kingdom of animals. And then we have Pixel Riffs, who founded a city in the desert, and then after he killed the dragon, or was responsible for the killing of the dragon, he got exiled from his own kingdom, went back to the town that he was originally found in. They turned him away, and then he found an old shrine that turned totems of undying into thunderstorms. But he was still so mortal that he ended up just kind of like fading away into the sands of the desert.
What?
So you don't know Pixel Riff lore.
What?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I know a lot of Minecraft lore. I know I've spent so much time doing research on these different things. I surprisingly have not watched everything out there. What?
What part would you like me to expand upon?
I don't, because I'm lost.
So, Pixel Rift was a character wandering the desert, and then he comes upon a village, and the village takes him in. And then there, Pixel Rift has this idea of founding an empire in the desert to take anyone in who needs it. And he does that away from the village he was found in. And then at some point, when he was working with or working by or being manipulated by Zoronoff, that ends up causing the dragon to die. That's due to the whole like cod head prank or whatever, when they got trapped in the end and the only way out was through killing the dragon. But that caused such a shift in the world. The people of the desert, despite being humans, could feel that. And so when Pix entered into his village again, the villagers could feel that he was at fault for the dragon's death, for what was going on, and they turned him away, not wanting him to bring that energy to the village. And when he's wandering the desert, being exiled and abandoned, he finds this old shrine that shows him, or like teaches him.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Question.
Oh,
Is
answer.
that connected to the campfire that just turns everything into lightning?
You know, I don't know, but we're gonna nod and agree yes.
Okay. Because I don't think, from the point of views I watched, we ever explained the campfire in season 2. So.
We don't. That's just kind of part of the world.
Okay. Sure. I guess that's a thing. No, that's where Joel comes in. Joel comes in he's somehow season 2, Joel, is somehow connected to both of those things.
Yeah, to the shrine that
know.
turns totems of Undying into thunderstorms. We could totally use that to explain Joel, the god of thunder, who in season 2, Joel talks about there being a goddess of farming, and then her name is not Pearl, though, because he talks about it out of character, slightly saying he doesn't want to step on anyone else's lore. Maybe their names changed throughout history. Joel was not around for when Pearl became a goddess, but also he was not technically a god until the end of season 2, when he ascended to that next level.
Cool. So I watched Joel's perspective. I did. I really did. I watched every episode. I don't remember that.
That was his finale.
And I feel like I'm losing it. Minecraft is my thing. What is happening?
How about we talk about Mythical Sausage? We have to breeze through his whole lore because it needs its own episode. But yeah, he was a human who fell to Zornoff because he was an assassin and he was like corrupted by the greed of power or whatever. And then he started learning magic through originally the Crystal Cliffs because that is a school for magic. But then through Zornoff, he like decides, what if I start doing this blood ritual magic, the sacrifice magic? And that's when the blood sheep start showing up in his kingdom. And then we start being introduced to Dark Sausage, aka Bratwurst, aka Evil Him, who came about because of a summoning circle or a spell that was done in a summoning circle. And then we start introducing different dimension lore. When he breaks off from Zornoff, Mythical Sausage realizes he actually has a knack for dimension travel magic. And there's these different dimensions that run parallel to his that are very similar to his that he keeps getting sucked into, and he learns that he can trap Mythical Sausage in there in a world where Zornoff never got corrupted or never started corrupting other people. He can trap Mythical Sausage there, which does kind of imply that's where Scott ended up in the world Evil Sausage is in. But Empires SMP apparently just has a bunch of like different dimensions floating around it.
Hey, well, it's not just that. Ollie specifically.
And Ollie.
Came from parallel universe, I guess. Which was not Origin. Oh god,
Afterlife.
There we go. Which in my brain I just went, yep, that's one of the parallel universes.
Neither Ollie nor Sausage have proper control over their dimension hopping magic, but Ollie feels so much like he is reactionary to it, like someone is dropkicking him from dimension to dimension, while Mythical Sausage is accidentally ending up places because he can't control his own magic. Ollie, it is not his fault, but he just became the punching bag for someone else.
He is just jumping places. He's having an adventure. He's really confused why his friends keep changing characters.
He's just going with it, though. But he shows up only in season 2, where there is God, there is magic, but it is in such a way that it feels different than what it was before. Pixel Rift specifically is a human archaeologist who is trying to discover what happened in that 1,000-year gap after the rapture. And like Ollie shows up and says, no, I'm actually the one who killed the dragon. But Pix is like, no, but we know who killed the dragon because it's why Zornoff was released in the first place.
No. He just spent too long in credits. Canonically, like several months. Spent just looking at the Minecraft credits.
Just looking at the
I
Minecraft
think about
credits.
Ollie's Empire lore a lot.
It's such good lore, but I feel like we need to have a dedicated episode to Dimension Travelers, and Ollie is going to be shoved into that. But let's focus on the vibes of Season 2. Pixel Rift says, after the end of Season 1, as the empires scattered, people came together and formed this unified empire, which then became the ruins that Pix was digging up, like that was his base. And so through his discovery of this stuff, we were able to learn a lot more about the world, but not stuff that directly affects characters nowadays. Like we learned about the creation myth, where the world was full of giants, but when they died, their bodies turned into the mountains and rivers. That doesn't affect anything outside of like, yes, that's why the pirate place has a giant skull. It was one of these giants before. But it's so much less
the fan art.
It's so much less about let's explain the stories happening now, and instead let's explain how we got here, which I think is the biggest difference between 1 and 2. All this talk we just had about 1, how everything was connecting together. Season 2 feels so much more about yes, that happened. Let us live now.
I know more about season 2. I watched so many more perspectives that season.
So, do you want to talk about
cool.
Pearlescent Moon then, who wasn't actually in season 2 until the Hermitcraft crossover? And then when she showed up, Sausage was like, "But you're the Saint Pearl, the Pearl of the Sanctuary," and Pearl's like, "No, but that feels familiar."
So technically, she wasn't there till the crossover with Hermitcraft happened. However, all the Orion Sound visited in Sausage's words, Santa Perla.
You have to be careful with how you pronounce that because you can very easily just say the word chair, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, Saint Pearl was the one who kind of like shoved Ollie into Empires, and that was the first like time. And I remember it being specifically connected to Mythical Sausage. And so that was before the crossover happened. And so I think that's why. I don't think it was actually planned for when Pearl joined for her to be in that skin. No, it had to have been. No, it had to have been. She specifically had to have changed. Never mind. But when Pearl came over during the crossover, she was dressed in her season 1 outfit, the like sunflower dress of the earth, of the land. And Sausage was, look, it's one of our saints. It is this glorious godly being. It is Pearl. And Pearl's just, oh, okay, I guess. That's nice.
That's nice. Yeah, like, again, there is gods in the world of season 2. Like, we have Joel as the example, but it's so separated from how it was in season 1. And Pearl just showing up going, okay, I'm gonna go hang out with the hermits now. It feels so separate from it, if that makes sense.
There's clearly crossover, there's clear continuity. However, it's also the separation of characters between worlds.
Yeah, like Pearl was doing her Hermitcraft character at that point. And so when she was like showing up in her Empire's character skin, it's like, I mean, yes, technically that is a different dimension Pearl, but that is not the Pearl that we are following right now.
Exactly. It's Pearl, but it's not the same Pearl. Because that's how the characters in Minecraft typically work, if you are a storyteller at least. It's the same, but it's very clearly different.
Yeah, Mythical Sausage, again, we have to bring back, he is, in this version of the world, 1,000 years have passed. He is technically a different Mythical Sausage, but he still has this pull across dimensions, this pull across times, and Bubbles, his dog, is once again here, which means this is a Mythical Sausage that can travel through worlds, and we start seeing this, like, use of, like, once again, you are here, you are magical, but this world is different now.
Believe it or not, 1,000 years changes a planet.
1,000 years changes things. Magic is still around. We obviously Shovel, who was studying to be a witch at a school, but it wasn't Crystal Cliffs, because when something went wrong, the immediate response was, let's expel this witch and tell her she can never use magic again. I mean, yes, we found out the guy who did that was evil or whatever, but the response from Shovel was like, not, oh yeah, I'm gonna continue practicing witchcraft. Like, she did it in secret, and then when she was allowed back into her society, she said no, and in fact took storm magic from Joel and went off to Witchcraft SMP and became the Storm Witch.
I love her. I love her so much. I don't think you understand how much I love Shovel lore.
Shovel lore is amazing and awesome, and I love how it slowly connects and feels like own characters, and it's really, really good. But I also love how it says, yes, we are in this world still, but it's a different world. Like, again, 1,000 years changes things.
Things change, things grow, things... It's perfectly reasonable to assume that when they formed this one big empire for a while, and that collapsed and stuff, Saint Pearl became a thing. That makes perfect sense, because that's a person, that's a leader. Oh, they're so intrinsically connected to the Earth that they're going to continue her story on, and it gets changed into worship at some point. That seems completely reasonable to me. Of story of world grow, change, different.
Catherine's empire in season 2 really does show like empires collapse here, not just in great big catastrophes, but also in just ways empires collapse. Catherine's lore is that she was born the day her empire started to fall apart. She is a princess who is cursed to at day be a princess, but at night be a monster slayer because she wants to reunite her people again.
I love empires. I don't have much to add here. I'm just gonna continue saying.
You're just saying, I just love
find
it.
it fascinating.
Yeah, let's speed things up. Let's talk about the people we've missed it so far in season 2. Scott was a curiosity collector, totally not a thief, who, again, season 2 was not about empires for him. He showed up and just started running a small town with some inns and some llama. It's like how Shovel was, her empire was her alone in the swamp. Scott's empire was a small town that you could visit before continuing on to the next place.
It was a very clear traveling town, not like a place a whole bunch of people lived in, but a place that you come, you go, you meet some strangers, you lose an eyeball, you find a skull, you find crystals, it happens.
The great age of large-scale empires was over. It was time to settle and live and breathe while you can. There was no big catastrophes happening. There was no rapture, but people were still not quite ready to sit down. There were very small communities going on.
Who else have we not talked about?
We haven't talked about Fwip. Now, Fwip is interesting because Pixel tells us that the goblins are actually descended from the Ocean Empire. And I'm not sure how this happened. I know, I'm still trying to connect it in my brain, but somehow the fish and the axolotl people of the Ocean Empire moved inland, moved underground, and the adaptations they originally had to help them swim ended up really helping them in digging and staying underground in these wet, damp environments.
I mean, I guess, because like axolotls in Minecraft are typically found in the caves.
They just return to the caves. That's where the goblins come from. It is once again a connection to season 1, but is once again reminding us that the old ways are over. It's smaller communities now. People had to adapt to where they were before.
You keep saying things that I'm just like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that checks out. Yeah, I'm saying this with such confidence right now. Like, this is why people think I know what I'm talking about. I'm like, I'm just certain in my words, even though I'm just spitballing here. Because we also have Jimmy, who may or may not be a toy, but his lore is that he found a hat in a cave and then declared himself sheriff of a town. His empire was once again a small community in a town that he ruled over as a sheriff, not even a proper leader.
He does the law. Not the law, the law.
The law. And then we have False and Gemini Tay, who are Hermitcraft crossover
False
people.
has lore.
False has so much lore, but not lore in the way of the Empire's world. False, we're going to call her Empire's False for the sake of clarity, was actually the twin of Hermitcraft Falls. And the lore is, for a very long time, Hermitcraft Falls and Empire Falls lived together on Hermitcraft, but everyone thought they were the same person. They lived as one person until Empire's Falls pranks started becoming too violent, started becoming too destructive. Hermitcraft is we prank hard, but we clean up harder. Empire's Falls stopped doing that. So Hermitcraft Falls functionally hit her over her head and threw her in the portal that was in Green's basement without really knowing where it led. And Empire's Falls...
toss them in the rift.
Yeah, just toss them in the rift. And Empire's Falls woke up on Empires with no memory of what was going on and just kind of went, okay, I guess I need to figure out who I am now. And that's how that season ends for that character, is saying, I'm going to find out who I am now.
Yeah, which is her arc. That's what that story is the who am I, which is vaguely reminiscent of Jimmy's season 1. It's just, that's the journey we're on. That's the journey we're on. We're not on a journey of, I want to make the biggest kingdom in the world. We're on a journey of, I'm in a world. What?
And then Gemini Tay, who is a dimension-traveling LARPer.
She's not even canonically, has amnesia or anything. She just likes to LARP.
Yeah, she, I guess in her sleep or somehow or another, travels dimensions and looks around and goes, oh, everyone here is an empire or a king or a witch or something. I'm going to be a princess of this town I just made, because the empires aren't big enough to really, check themselves. If one just randomly pops up declaring to be a princess, it's like, okay, I guess you're a princess now.
Yeah. I wish that's how the world worked. We could just go, I am princess.
Oh, well, you have to go back to
Actually.
city-states and small empires, and like when your city that you live in now is technically the size of a kingdom before, like that's how you would get random princesses just popping up.
Mm-hmm. I love Gemma's just laughing. It's funny.
It's funny. But those are the characters of 1 and 2, and like we can really look at this and say, yeah, 1 was once again this top-down fantasy political story, and 2 was small towns coming together, living in a world that, yes, is magical, but is not going to change the fact that they still have to live day to day.
Lore.
Lore. The lore.
Sometimes you get in a little tub and you say, oh, look at this, lore's happening, and suddenly there's a building.
Lore's happening, yes. And you know, Joel, he went from such like, I'm so anti-lore, I can't even see the demon, to, and now lore is occurring, and yes.
He just states that it's happening. That's the thing, because he just says, it's happening. It does.
And like, yeah. I mean, if you're playing a god of the world, you can just say it's happening, because you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But shall we move on to the Q&A?
Yeah, because there's probably a handful out there.
Do-do-do-do.
Oh, you did the musical ditty
I did
this
the
time.
musical ditty this time.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Let's see. Let's start off with a couple fuzzball questions, because once again, Fuzz got very excited about us doing an Empires SMP episode and flooded our inbox on our Tumblr website saying, I have things to say.
Reasonable.
So question number 1, Fuzz asked, what empire would you most likely want to be a citizen of? I'm going to say 1 or 2 season.
Ooh, okay. I think the Crystal Cliffs would be fun.
I do love the idea of going to school at the Crystal Cliffs. However, most of the students there are pillagers. So, like...
So you also get to, like, have a crossbow.
You also probably take classes in archery. Never mind, that sounds amazing. I'm gonna go there.
Yeah, no, that sounds great, actually. Scots is also just fun. Both seasons, but I was thinking season 2 as I said it. Because just traveling towns are always really fun to me. In real life, I really love small towns and hanging out in small communities. And when you have one that's just that every once in a while gets taken over by a llama.
You know, sometimes llamas just become people, and that's just what you gotta do about it.
Yeah.
Question number 2, it probably should have been brought up in the actual video itself, but like, do you think the massive success in the lore and the story of season 1 kind of hampered the vibe of season 2 and why they haven't really done a season 3 yet?
I don't think so. I think it's unique things, and it's just you wanted to do it again. Where no matter what you do, if you do something and then say, okay, do it again, it's going to be different. Regardless of how hard you try, it's going to be different. So they obviously went, okay, we know it's going to be different, and then just had fun with it.
I think they did rush into season 2, but I don't think that, like, the success of 1 is stopping a 3 from happening. I think they're just taking time and letting things sit for a while, because that's what you need to do as creators. Like, you can't rush into the same project over and over again. That's how you get burnt out.
It's true. That's also how you run out of ideas or repeat story motifs. You can have creators, like, just not do it again, not because they didn't like it, but because, okay, we did that. All done now.
All done.
It was done.
Well, the question number 3 ties into, if there is a season 3, do you think whoever is going to be assigned the Mesa is going to fall to the short curse?
Yeah, so I didn't know that was a thing.
Yes, so Joel, season 1. Probably. I'm trying to think, like, who would be the shortest, and, like, who would be taking over the... I mean, we don't know the characters yet.
Yeah, because it doesn't exist yet.
It doesn't exist yet. But, you know, Jimmy became a toy, and he therefore was the shortest. But then in season 1, we had Joel, who was just the shortest human marrying the tallest goddess.
My real answer is maybe.
Maybe, probably.
But I think it could be fun. Just coincidental.
Flip. All right, and then the final question is just kind of one that's been sitting in the back burner of like, oh, this would be a cool question to ask in our Empires episode, so this is from me. Imagine you're the head of a noble household in some sort of like fantasy or sci-fi setting, or in this case, Empires SMP. what would like the motifs be like? What would our like bases be like? What would our empires like? What's the vibe? What's the theme we would be going for?
So, you know me. I love fairies. I love the fae. I associate with them whenever I can. So let me make a fairy court.
So you would be in Catherine Elizabeth. We're changing the answer to the previous question.
I think it would be a combination of like the mushroom stuff of shrub and also Catherine Elizabeth's fairy stuff, because I think I could do some fun. Like, I've built this in Minecraft a few times now in a few different ways, so I can't settle on exactly one idea. But like, bunch of huts, but all in like squares, circles, in specific shapes to make them rings around the city. And in the center is like this ring. I would have a portal to Nether most likely, but a fairy ring kind of stuff. Let me. All of it overgrown, covered in moss. Do it.
My current project for an upcoming SMP, which is probably started-ish or gotten more than started than it is now. I joined DM SMP. We're having a very slow start, so I haven't actually had the chance to build the space. But my current plan is kind of like this big mountain that does have like a frieze as like a building front. Like it's very like Dwarven Keep from Impulse's season 9 place. Like it has a building built into the mountain, but the outside of it, the plan is like this lush field of flowers and blossoms and moss. Like I want it very naturey outside and then very like underground cozy on the inside. Like the motif is the like balance between outside and in.
Let me make an empire based off of the fairies, specifically the balance between the fairy tale fairies and the I'm gonna kidnap you and take your children fairies. Let me have a battle.
You want the balance of what does it mean to be fae?
Yes.
I think that was the perfect question to end on then. So I guess we're gonna go. Ooh, we doubled our length in episode.
Yeah, I noticed. There was times I was like, okay, let's move on to the next portion.
I got let's continue talking about things. That's why we're here.
Yeah. Do you need to do a part 1, part 2, man?
No, I can edit this. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to this episode of FanDive. We'll be back again next Monday diving into yet another fandom. Have a topic you would like us to cover? Head over to our website, fandive.tumblr.com. There you can also find any episode relevant images and general shenanigans that we get up to. It is Tumblr after all. We're not ashamed of being fans of things.